A very good morning to my dear students of class 8, and I am happy to welcome you all to today's botany class. What are we going to learn today? Today's class is going to be about interdependence between organisms. So what is the topic for today? Interdependence between organisms. So let's get started. In our previous few classes, we have been studying about food chains, food webs and energy flow, all know. So it is all between the organisms in the ecosystem. The relationship according to their feeding pattern we have studied based on how they feed and how they depend upon each other for feeding we have studied. So today's topic also has a word called dependence, no? So this dependence is the relationship between organisms, not for feeding but except for feeding, even for other purposes. Many organisms in the ecosystem or in the environment are connected with each other. I repeat, apart from feeding relationship, it is not that only for feeding the organisms depend upon each other. Apart from feeding, there are relationships between organisms in the environment for other purposes also. About the other purposes and the types of relationships only we are going to learn today. Before that, what does this word inter mean? What does inter means? Between. Say for example, if they declare a competition called inter-school competition, what does it mean? It means in between many schools. So the competition will be between many schools. So inter means between is the meaning. So interdependence means how the organisms are depending on each other, not only for feeding a relationship but from other relationships like for shelter, for nutrient uptake, all they depend on each other. We learn in detail. So before learning about that, how they depend on each other, this interdependence is of three types called symbiosis, parasitism and predation. These terms may be new to you. Repeat the words 2 or 3 times so that you get familiar with these terms. Symbiosis, parasitism and predation. In all these 3 types, it is all relationship between more than one organism, okay, and these 3 also differ from each other. That's why they have different terms, no? They differ from each other, but in all the relationships, the relationship is between at least 2 organisms or 2 or many also you can address to. So interdependence between organisms are of 3 types called symbiosis, parasitism and predation. So we learn about these relationships in detail. So we'll start with the first relationship called symbiosis. What is symbiosis? It is a relationship between 2 organisms. In an environment, there may be 2 organisms, and the relationship between the 2 organisms is symbiosis. How they are related? In this relationship, both of them are mutually benefited. What is a mutual? Mutual means equally. If one is benefited from, say for example, if there is organism 1 and organism 2. If one is benefited from 2, 2 also should be benefited from 1, no? Only then the relationship will be a healthy relationship. So this kind of relationship called symbiosis involves at least 2 organisms where one is benefited from 2 and 2 is also benefited from 1. That is why the word mutual is given, okay. And the example for this type of relationship is relationship of rhizobium within nodule. Both these words, rhizobium and nodule, may be new to you, right? Rhizobium you must not have heard, and nodule also maybe it's new to you. We learn in the next slide what is rhizobium and what is nodule and how relationship occurs between them. Okay. What is rhizobium? Rhizobium is the name of a bacteria. What is rhizobium? Rhizobium is the name of a bacteria. Where you can find this bacteria? The special property of this bacteria is Usually where you can find bacteria? Usually in spoiled food, or in the air you can find, or in the water also you can find bacteria, right? But this bacteria has a special property which can live only inside the nodules. This bacteria will live only inside the nodules. What is a nodule? Nodule are round structures. Can you see dark brown, round structures in the roots? So these are called nodules. Where you can find nodules? You can find nodules in the roots of leguminous plants. First of all, nodules are bead-like structures. When you see the structure of a nodule, it appears like a bead. Where no chain on will have beads, no. So similarly, like a bead, this nodule will appear. So what did I tell you? Rhizobium is a bacteria. This bacteria is found inside nodules. What is a nodule? Nodules are bead-like structures, and these bead-like structures are found in the roots of certain plants called leguminous plants, or you can also address it as legumes, or you can call it as leguminous plants. Leguminous plants. What is this leguminous plants? Certain varieties like pea, this is peas, green peas you eat, no? That is pea plant, and beans you must have seen in vegetable markets all, no? Your mom used to buy, I guess. So pea and beans are examples of leguminous plants. So only in leguminous plants there are root nodules. Suppose if you happen to see these plants somewhere, no, just pull out a plant and you can check the roots, and those roots will have this bead-like, bundle-like structures you can find in all the leguminous plants. So inside this bead-like, bundle-like structure only, what you can find? You can find this bacteria called as rhizobium. So what we have studied here, I told you symbiosis is a relationship between two organisms where both the organisms are mutually benefited, and the example what I have given here is the relationship between a bacteria called as a rhizobium and the root nodules of a plant. Here what are the two organisms involved here? The root nodules of the plants and the bacteria are the two organisms involved here. Why I call root nodule as an organism? Because it belongs to the plant, no? So actually the relationship is between the rhizobium bacteria and the plant. So plant and bacteria is the are the two organisms involved in this relationship. Okay. So how it is benefited? I told you a point. Both of them will be mutually benefited in this relationship. No. So how they are benefited? We'll learn in the next slide. Okay. So this bacteria which is present inside the root nodules of leguminous plants, what they do is they have a special property of converting atmospheric nitrogen. See, actually these plants, no, you all must know, I guess, plants will need so much of nitrogen. Okay, they will need nitrogen for their growth. The main factor which helps the plant to grow will be nitrogen. Okay, and most of the plants will take the nitrogen either from the atmosphere or from the soil. Mostly from the soil the plants will take. But this plant, no, the leguminous plants has no tendency to take the nitrates. Even if you apply nitrates or nitrogen fertilizers around the plant, no, these leguminous plants are poor in uptake of nitrogen fertilizers. Okay, but at the same time this rhizobium bacteria which is present in the nodules of the roots of the leguminous plants will help the bacteria to get the nitrogen from the atmosphere directly. You know, our atmosphere, just like carbon dioxide gas, nitrogen gas is also present in the atmosphere, no, like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen gas is all is present in the atmosphere, no. So this bacteria rhizobium, what it does, it will take the nitrogen from the atmosphere directly. Why it takes from the atmosphere? Because it does not have the property of taking up nitrogen fertilizers from the soil. This plant is poor in nitrogen uptake from the soil. That's why it takes from the atmospheric nitrogen. But again, it cannot take a gas directly. It cannot take a gas directly from the atmosphere. The plant cannot take gases directly. So what happens is this bacteria rhizobium will convert this nitrogen gas into nitrates. Okay, the atmospheric nitrogen around the plant is converted into nitrate by the rhizobium. Now nitrates can be taken by the plant, but the gas itself cannot be taken by the plant. What gases plants will take? Either carbon dioxide it will take and give out oxygen. No, it doesn't have any mechanism to take nitrogen directly, but this special bacterium rhizobium's function is to take nitrogen and convert it into nitrates. Okay, so now the plant has got nitrates. No, I told you nitrogen in the form of nitrates is always helpful for the growth of the plant. So how the bacteria is benefiting the plant now? The bacteria benefits the plant by providing nitrogen in the form of nitrates to the plant. I told you in this relationship both are benefited, right? So the first benefit is for the plant by the bacteria. What the bacteria does? It gives nitrogen source to the plant. Okay. Now how the bacteria is benefited living in this root nodule? This should also be benefited. No, this is benefited. In turn, the bacteria is benefited by getting shelter. What is shelter? Shelter is a place where an organism lives. No, so the root nodule bundles will provide a shelter for the bacteria. So it has a place to live. No, so it has shelter, and also it will take the nutrition or nutrients from the plants. The plant will have other nutrients, no, like other minerals. All the bacteria will take as their food. Clear? So here the relationship is between the bacteria called rhizobium and which one? The plant. Okay, the root nodules of the leguminous plant. How rhizobium bacteria is benefited? The bacteria gets a place to live inside the root nodules of the leguminous plants, and also it can take whatever nutrients the plant has, it will take for its survival. It is not that it will destroy the plant. Why? Because bacteria are so small, it will require only less nutrients when compared to the plants, and also plants will have many nutrients, no? So only a few proportion of the or ratio of the nutrients the bacteria will take, but for the bacteria it is more than sufficient. So in that way bacteria is benefited. How the plant is benefited? The plant, leguminous plants are poor in taking nitrogen from the soil, so the presence of this rhizobium bacteria will help them to get nitrogen from the atmosphere in the form of nitrates, because rhizobium bacteria has a property of converting atmospheric nitrogen gas into nitrates. So this is how both are benefited in symbiotic relationship. So the next type of relationship is parasitism. What is parasitism? It is again a relationship between two organisms. Symbiosis also is a relationship between two organisms. Now, similarly, parasitism is also a relationship between two organisms. Okay, but in this relationship, one benefits. Okay, there are two organisms involved, and one organism out of two will be benefited. Benefited means it will get some advantage. It is positive from this relationship. It benefits from this type of relationship. And the one which benefits, no, it is called as parasite. So in parasitism, the relationship is between the parasite and what about the other organism at the expense of the other. What does this mean? Suppose if there are two organisms called A and B. I told one organism is benefited. Say for example, A is benefited, that is the parasite is benefited. Okay, it has some advantage at the expense of the other, which means the advantage it takes from the other person, that is B, it will take the advantage from B. Okay, what about the condition of B? The other is harmed, the other loses something or it is damaged by A. In symbiosis, I told you the relationship is a mutual relationship where A and B both will be benefited. A will give something to B and get something from B. B will give something to B and get something from B. So, in symbiosis, both were benefited, right? So, but here in parasitism, one is benefited, and how it is benefited? It causes something bad to the other organism, and out of that only it is getting benefited. So this relationship is called parasitism, and the one which benefits is called the parasite, and the one which is harmed, B is harmed, no, harmed means it is affected some way. The one which is affected is called as host. So here in parasitism, the relationship is between the who and who? The relationship is between parasite and host. Okay, and who is benefited? Parasite is benefited, and who is affected? Host is affected. Clear? So this is the relationship between parasite and host. Let us see an example for host-parasite relationship. Okay, see this one. Can you see a hole? There is a circle here, right? And there are worms here. These are all worms. Okay. These are all worms, and this is a hole. This hole is actually the tube of the intestine. In your intestine, you have tubes like this, no? Small intestine, large intestine are all tubes, right? Suppose if I cut this section, cut some portion of the tube and see like this, it will appear like a hole, right? Like this it will appear. When I cut, the portion will appear like a hole. That is what is shown here. Okay. Why I am explaining this, I will tell you. So here the example for parasitic relationship. See, always do not think there is only one example for symbiotic relationship. There are many examples, but in whatever is given in your textbook I am explaining. Okay. So where in whatever relationship, if there are two organisms and both are benefited, you can call it as symbiotic relationship. Similarly, wherever one is affected and the other is benefited, it gets the term parasitism. It does not mean only this relationship is happening only between these two organisms. It is just an example. In your real life, you itself can check and see if there is a relationship between two and what type of relationship it is between two organisms. Like that you can analyze and you can categorize within these three categories, whether it is symbiotic or parasitic or predation. Like that you yourself can write a list. Okay. Here the example given in your textbook is the relationship between tapeworm and the intestinal wall of the human. This is intestine, no? Which is the wall? This is the wall of the intestine. See, in the wall of the intestine, you can see tapeworm. It is a worm which lives in the intestine of, it is not present always. Sometimes when we take in unhygienic food or it will get into your body. So this tapeworm, it will live in the walls of the human intestine. In the intestinal walls you can see this one. I told you in this relationship, one is benefited, the other is affected. So they suck the digested nutrients from the human. So if there are worms in your intestine, no, you will feel tired and sick because most of your nutrients is taken up by the worms called tapeworms. Even in small children, no, if the child is not so active or if it is falling sick or if it is weak, no, usually old people all like grandmothers all, what they do, immediately they give some medicine for the worms to get out of the body. Then the child will feel better like that. Why? Because when there are worms in your intestine, the nutrients especially for small children, when they consume, the nutrients will not be absorbed by their body and most of the nutrients will be taken up by these worms. So who is benefited here? Here the worms are benefited, the tapeworms are benefited. Who is affected? The child is affected because the intestine is full of worms and the nutrients are all taken up by the tapeworm. So they suck the digested nutrients, whatever nutrients the child has digested and has in the intestine, it is taken up by the worms. man is harmed. Man, generally, I am giving an example as child, but generally human beings, even elder people can have this problem. So man is harmed. So here, who is the host? Man is the host. Why? Because he is affected. Then who is the parasite here? The tapeworm is the parasite. Do you understand what is about parasitism? It is a relationship between two organisms called parasite and host. Who is the parasite here? Tapeworm is the parasite. Where can you find tapeworms? Sometimes it is found in the intestinal walls of the human beings. What will happen if it is present on the walls? It will suck the digested nutrients present in the intestinal walls. And what is the result? The man is harmed. The host is harmed by losing the nutrients. Okay. So this is about parasitism. So we have studied about symbiosis, we have studied about parasitism. What is the third relationship? It is called predation. The third type of interdependence is predation. Who is involved? This is again a relationship between two organisms. Okay, and those organisms, one hunts the other. In this relationship, one will eat the other. What is the difference between parasitism and predation then? In parasitism, tapeworm doesn't eat the human being. Does it eat the complete child or the man? No, right? It just sucks the nutrients. It is benefited some way, but it does not destroy completely. But here if you see, one organism will hunt the other. What is hunting? It means it will kill the other where the other organism two's life is lost, and the hunter is called the predator. Suppose if there are two organisms, 1 and 2, one will hunt 2 or it will kill 2, so one is called, the hunter is called the predator. That is why the relationship is called predation. From the term itself you can understand. In parasitism also you had two terms. Now what were the terms? One term was parasite. That's why the relationship is called parasitism. Here the hunter is called as the predator, and that's why the term is called as predation. The relationship is called as predation. Who is the other one? The other one, the hunted animal, is called the prey. So here the relationship between the organisms are predator and prey. One is called predator, the other one is called prey. So predator's function is to kill the prey, and prey will die. Can you understand? So this is about predation. Let's see a example for this. What is the example for this? See, the picture is given. Relationship between a tiger and a deer. Can you see what is happening? Tiger is hunting the deer. The tiger hunts the deer for its food. So who is benefited here? Why predation here? Because, okay, before that the tiger hunts the food. The tiger hunts the prey. So here who is the predator? Tiger or the deer? Predator is the tiger. Who is the predator? The tiger is the predator. Why? Because it is the one which hunts its prey. And who is the prey here? The deer is the prey. Why? Because it is being killed by the predator. So here the relationship between tiger and deer is an example for predation. Okay, why predation is necessary? Why it is essential in this environment or world? Suppose if there are no predators at all, say for example, if there are no tigers at all, the number of deers will be increasing so much so that the world will be fully covered with deers, right? So only if there are predators, the number of deers will be checked, which means there will be a balance in the ecosystem. Similarly, there will be some other organism to kill the tiger, so the number of tigers will also be balanced in this environment. So if at all there is no process of predation in this environment, then the number of one particular organism organism will be increased so much. So that will be the result if there is no predation. So predation is essential to maintain balance in the ecosystem or in this world. Clear? So this is about the relationships, that is symbiosis, parasitism and predation. So for your homework, what you are going to do is read page number 58 for your homework. So read your daily lesson so that it is easy for you to attend your next class test. We will be conducting very shortly. So learn your daily lessons. So this is all for today's biology class, and until I meet you in your next class, you all take care.